Marco the dog trainer here. Today we're going to do a quick video on the best dog bed for a Labradoodle. Now, when I'm working with a client that has a Labradoodle, the majority of the time I'm probably going to be recommending the Amazon Basics elevated cooling bed, and that's what I've got set up for you guys here. So I decided to set up the extra large and the large. These are the two that I use most frequently at my house, but they do offer 5 different sizes. So I'm going to put links in the video description to all 5 sizes, so that way you can pick whatever one works best for your particular Labradoodle. Now, I pulled out Enzo, the standard poodle, and I don't have a Labradoodle, so he's the closest thing that I could get for reference, so I figured I would just throw him on his bed for this video. It looks like he's already asleep. So let's talk about why I like these particular beds so much, and especially for Labradoodles. Okay, so first and foremost, these beds are very inexpensive. So definitely not the fanciest beds in the world, not the bougiest. They definitely aren't those nice like furniture looking type beds. They're pretty basic, but for how inexpensive they are, I think that there's a lot of value. Like, they bring a lot of value for sure. So, so that's the first thing. Is like, you know, I think everybody can appreciate a little bit of a cheaper option for this kind of stuff. Now, the second thing is going to be probably the biggest drive of why I recommend these beds for Labradoodles is going to be the cooling aspect. Any dog that has thick fur and that gets hot, you know, I live in Georgia where it really gets brutal in the summer. I'm going to be recommending this elevated bed because it really helps with temperature control. So because it's elevated off the ground, cool air is kind of constantly coming up from underneath, and the fabric is very breathable, so it really comes through nicely and can help them regulate their temperature. I've even seen some clients take the bed and just put it over an air conditioning vent, so it's like deliberately sending like very cold air up. Now, let's say our dog kind of still likes all that extra cushion, but they don't like getting hot. Well, then sometimes I'll just throw a couple blankets on here, and if they want that extra cushion, they kind of bunch it up together and lay on it, and when they get too hot, they just kind of lay next to it. And that can be nice, especially if you get this, like, you know, the bigger model. Now, that kind of leads me into the next thing that I really like about these beds is that they're way easier to clean and maintain than fabric and foam type beds. Okay, so because there's nothing really absorbent on these beds, like I said, the fabric is very breathable. If our dog had an accident or threw up or got sick or something like that, we can just, you know, at best take it out and spray it with a hose, or I mean at worst. But a lot of times I just spray it with disinfectant, I wipe it down with a rag, and it's totally fine. And then as far as like the blankets go, you know, once a week I just throw them in the wash, and that can be a lot easier to clean and a lot more practical, because like foam beds and things like that I've definitely used a lot of them in the past, I just find that they don't hold up very well when you're washing them frequently. So this has always kind of worked as a better alternative over time for me. And that's why I kind of prefer this route. Now, also in the ballpark of like cleaning is that I know that a lot of doodles are not supposed to shed, but comically, some of the heaviest shedding dogs I've ever seen were Labradoodles, or at least I've met some in the past. So, so these elevated beds like are nice if you have a Roomba, because it can go underneath them and pick up some of the dirt and the hair that kind of drops through, or you can just take a vacuum attachment and kind of vacuum underneath it. So now, the last area that we'll talk about as a really big benefit for these beds is just training itself. So a really big portion of my dog training is teaching dogs to lay down and stay on their bed. So we call it like the spot command or the place command. And a lot of times, you know, again, from the cooling side, like if they're going to be on there for a long time, we want them to be comfortable. Now, as far as like, you know, puppies and that kind of stuff, accidents, if you're training, again, easier to clean, you know, some of the points that I already made. Now, as far as like a puppy, you know, a lot of times puppies are a little destructive and they're kind of chewing on things. So I'm not going to say that these beds are entirely chew proof, but they're going to hold up a lot better than a foam or fabric type bed will. There's not any stuffing in here, where I think that when puppies start to like rip the casing on a fabric bed, that's really the beginning of them destroying the bed, because they're going to start pulling out the foam, and I think there's a little bit of a fixation with it, that they really enjoy it, and before you know it, that bed's on its way out. Where these beds, there's not any foam or anything for them to pull out, so I don't think there's as much gratification in them destroying it. So they just tend to not chew these ones quite as frequently as they do the other ones. Now, again, not saying that this is entirely chew proof. I'm probably going to do a video down the road of what I would recommend for like a really heavy chewer, but this bed is going to hold up a lot better, just because there's really nothing around the edge that a puppy can kind of get their teeth into. And then the last thing, as far as, again, training that spot or place command, is that for some dogs that are struggling with the concept, something about the elevation can help them make sense of the boundary, of staying on the boundary. And I think it's just because they have to get off of the bed and step down in order to, break the command. I think that it can help some dogs kind of connect the dots a little faster. Now, again, I don't think you necessarily need one of these beds to train a place command or a spot command, but it definitely can help in some situations. So outside of that, why don't we just take these beds apart so I can show you what it's like to put them back together, and then we'll probably wrap up the video from there. Okay, guys, so this is, for the most part, what it looks like when everything is taken apart. If you lay everything out, when you get it out of the box. Now, the only thing I didn't do is I just left this piece in, just because it's a little redundant and I don't want this video to be longer than what it needs to be. But I just left this side in because we're going to be showing you what it looks like when we put that one together. Okay, now in the box, it's going to come with a tool that you can use to put this thing together, so you don't need to go out and buy anything. Now, the first step is going to be putting all the different poles in. Okay, so the longest poles are going to be in the front and back. Okay, and then the shorter poles are going to be more lengthwise. And once you kind of get that pushed in, then we're going to be putting these in. Now, the one thing you have to be careful of with this is that you'll see one side has a little bit of like an indent in it. I'll bring it a little closer so you can see. Okay, this little indented piece should be facing out. Okay, so when you put it in, just make sure that the indented side is facing away from the bed. Okay, and then there's also a little bit of like an arc on this horizontal pole that will line up with the shape of the inside of this piece. Okay. And I'm going to start by just using my fingers, and I'll probably tighten everything once I get the whole bed kind of put together. Again, making sure that the little indented piece is facing out. I think the first few times I put this together, I did it backwards and had to redo the whole thing. Okay. All right, and then like I said at the beginning of the video, the other side I just left put together. So that is going to be a little bit faster for me to show you how to put this thing together. And pretty much all the different sizes have the same, very, very similar assembly. The biggest bed, this extra large one, does have one extra component to it that the other ones do not have. Okay, and I'll show you guys that here in a second. Okay, so now that I've got the bulk of it put together, now I'm going to go through and tighten these with the wrench. Because the first time I did it, I was trying to tighten them all like one at a time as I was putting it together, and it just kind of throws things out of whack a little bit. So that's why I recommend only kind of half screwing them first until everything's put together, and then go through and tighten everything. And something I did not point out earlier in the video is that you can actually get a green version of this. So for whatever reason you prefer that, you can definitely do that. These light gray kind of gets stained a little bit from the Georgia red clay. So the green might have worked a little better if I was worried about that, but I don't really care about that kind of stuff. Now, if this were any of the smaller models, that would pretty much be it. But the extra large model comes with this extra piece here. Okay, that's just an extra, like an added support. Okay, so basically we just put these on. And this is going to go underneath in the middle. This part can be a little bit tricky. Actually, so we're going to lock this in on one side. Then we're going to lock it in on this side. And that is pretty much everything you need to know about the elevated or the Amazon Basic elevated cooling dog bed. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.